You are about to listen to a Jason Burgos exclusive interview.
Hey, doing good. How you doing?
I'm good. I appreciate the time as always. It's an honor and a pleasure to talk to you. I know I don't want to waste too much of your time, so I'll jump right into the questions.
Yeah, no problem. That was a good time. I'm just
great.
That was a good time. I got to work it out and stuff.
Oh no. Are you still training? Like what do you do now that the season's ended? Are you still working at Gracie's and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still just doing jiu-jitsu. I really enjoy the jiu-jitsu end of it. So I went in and trained jiu-jitsu today, and I like staying in shape. And like I'm living in New York, so not too much to do with most of my friends and family in California. So I'm like, well, I might as well work out. Luckily, I was healthy after the fight and didn't get banged up at all.
When do you plan to go back? I mean, I'm surprised that you're still here and you haven't gone back home. Do you enjoy New York?
Yeah, no, I do I enjoy New York. It's a great city, so I plan on being here at least a little bit longer. I'm not really sure at this point. I was hoping to get in the finals to PFL, so I kind of changed things up. Not really just trying to figure out what's next. I think I'm gonna do a little bit of grappling, do some grappling competitions and stuff. And obviously, there's no better place to be than Hinzo's for that.
Mm-hmm. Now, when the word retirement comes to your mind, like what are your thoughts and feelings? Is there a fear of the word? Is there an acceptance? Is there an apprehension? Like when you hear and think of that word, what do you think about that?
Well, a lot of mixed feelings. It's kind of a little bit of all that. It's kind of I've fought for like 19 years, so I've been known to I've identified myself professional fighter for 19 years. So it gets really tough to look past being a fighter, but I also feel like I've accomplished a lot in the sport. I've accomplished not everything I've set out to do, but 90% of what I set out to do. I think I won like 5 titles, be 5 UFC champs, so I can look back and say I've had a good career. So at least there's some regrets. I really wanted to end my career winning the PFL title and cap it off like that. But sometimes things in life don't go how you want. So it's part of it, like I said, I have a great career, so it's not like I can be too bummed about it, but I still really do enjoy fighting, do enjoy competing. So there's a little bit of like, okay, what do I do next? Mm-hmm. So,
when a fight of your caliber comes to this point in your career, I really can't imagine the difficulty of the decision. You still feel you can beat very good fighters, but you're not at your peak because age affects us all. This, it wins out, and you get older, you're not quite the same fighter you are. So it becomes like weighing the pros and cons of the situation. First, what are the reasons you feel you should still continue? Is it simply competing? Is it a love, a passion? What is keeping you to want to continue?
Yeah, I guess a lot of it is, surprising after 19 years, I still do love the sport and enjoy it. And I still feel like I can beat a lot of top guys. Unfortunately, losing to Ray Cooper twice is pretty depressing, but I feel like he is like a top guy in a tough matchup. So you look at that and like, man, this sucks losing to him. So you have to reevaluate. Do I just call it and accept that I've done quite a bit? Sucks going off on a loss, but unfortunately most guys do. Or do you go out and try to do 1 or 2 more? And that's kind of the situation I'm looking at right now. And it's not something I plan on making a decision for at least a couple months. I plan on just kicking back, doing some jiu-jitsu, maybe a couple jiu-jitsu tournaments, reflect on it, and then make that final decision.
Do finances play a part at all? I'm not sure if you're like married or you have a wife and kids or any of those kind of things. Like, do finances, is that part of the want to continue to drive? To continue to do it because you maybe something else you can't make quite the same money?
It's a small part. It's not the biggest part. It's a big chunk of cash. Everyone likes going out and making a big chunk of cash. But luckily, I do have other means of money. I've saved quite a bit, and I've put money away in investments, so I have money coming in other ways, and I have other things I can do. So I'm not like in a situation where I'm desperate for money. But no, there's not anyone who doesn't like going out there and grabbing a big chunk of cash. So of course it's a factor, but it's not the biggest factor.
Now, what on the flip side of it? What are the reasons why you say, okay, it's time? Is it a physical thing? Is it, some fighters, they just get tired of the grind. They get tired of the practice and all the work that needs to go in to compete at such a high level like you've been doing, like you said, for 19 years. Like, what are the reasons that make you go, maybe it is the end?
I think just I've had a good career already, so you don't want to just keep pushing, and after getting TKO'd by Cooper, it's like, okay, I'm healthy, but you don't want too many of those fights where you're out getting TKO'd. And I've been very fortunate and been very healthy all these years. You don't want to push it too long and end up getting injured right at the end. That'd be a shitty way to end your career.
Mm-hmm. Is it? And I'm glad you mentioned TKO because That's true. You do see a lot of guys at the end, they get knocked out, they have tough losses. Is that part of the reason I push? Because you don't want to be the one of those guys that overstays his welcome, and especially now with things like the information we now have with CTE and all these kind of things, is that part of the fear? You don't want to do further damage to yourself as a fighter.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I've gone through my career without getting hit too much. I mean, obviously I've been hit. Every fighter does, and in training, but I feel like I've been pretty good about not taking too much brain trauma and that CTE stuff. You know, you never know. You never know how bad it is. You know, I feel like I've gone pretty healthy, but it is something you think about. You don't want to end up later in life messed up when you've gone through your career pretty healthy. So it's not like, not something I think about all the time, but it definitely weighs in the back of your head a little bit.
Does the legacy of bad losses also affect you? Because say, for example, a BJ Penn, fantastic fighter, but he's probably stayed longer than he's his prime years. He's affected his legacy. His record doesn't look quite the same. I mean, are those are factors too? You're like, I don't want to pile up losses to this stellar career I've had.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, I've had a great career, and then you get a couple losses, and you start being like, oh man, should I still be doing this? Like you said, BJ Penn's a perfect example, and you get like these great guys like Rashad, less in the sport, but they go lose a few in a row, and you're like, oh man, it sucks. It doesn't mean, I personally don't think any less of these guys. I still think they put major impacts on the sport, but you still not really how I want to go out. And Cooper, I think the kid has a bright future. Losing to him sucks, but it's at least losing someone that I have feelings going to go far in the sport.
Now, speaking of entering the playoffs to face Ray Cooper for a second time, how were you feeling about the matchup the second time around? You mentioned in our last conversation what you felt you knew what your mistakes were. Did you go into the fight feeling very confident about the adjustments you planned to make the second time?
Well, I knew he was a tough fight, so I knew it was going to be one of those fights that, if I get him down, I could submit him. But if he hits me with some of those shots, he knew he was capable of knocking me out. But I definitely felt better about it, and I felt, healthier going in. The first, I had some health issues. The first, 2 fights of the PFL, doing a little back trouble, and I was actually healthy this one. So it's like, not that I was hurt bad enough to not fight last time, but how you have little things in the back of your head that are bothering you. So when they're 100% healthy and, still lost, not, when you go in there 100% healthy and there's not a single thing you can blame it on, that kind of, sometimes that's even like harder. You have to be like, well, I was healthy and he still beat me. But the kid, he's talented. He's one of those rare guys that has crazy speed and power.
Now, you see a lot of fighters when they're even pondering the thought of a retirement, they will do it right after a loss, if it's in their mind, whatever. And it's a rash decision because all the emotions. Immediately after the fight, was there a thought like, okay, maybe I should do it now, or was it like, shit, man, I feel like I'm still good. No, I want more of this.
Yeah, I mean, right after the fight, I was kind of like, man, yeah, I'm done. I'm not going to, because I really wanted to get in the finals. I'm like, oh, there's no point fighting anymore. But then I'm like, you know what? Instead of going out and saying I'm retired, I should sit back and think about it for a few months, so I don't go make a rash decision and retire and unretire. I see a lot of guys do that too, yeah. And that's a little bit embarrassing to be retiring, unretiring. I'd rather give some time to think about it and make sure that's really what I want to do.
Now, at many points in your career, it's been talked about, like in lead up to fights and stuff like that, how much of a major influence your father was in your life and your career. He unfortunately passed away. Like, if he was here now, what do you think his advice would be for you in this tough decision?
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good question. I'm not really sure, because it was like he was so involved with the sport and helping put the camps together and pretty much every aspect of decision making. So I don't really know. He probably the same thing. Probably suggests I take some time to think about it and weigh the options.
Now, if you decide to fight on, what's next? This is a big decision. Are you automatically signed on to continue in PFL next season? Do you want to go to PFL and try it again in the second season? Or do you want to, test the free agent market and see your value and get some big paydays before you finally call it a career? There's a lot of money getting thrown around now more than ever in the sport. Is that an option, free agency, or would you like PFL again?
Well, yeah, right now I think I am re-signed to PFL. I think they have the contract, they have the option to use me or not use me. I think so. It depends on what they would do with that. And yeah, and I think part of it, if I fight again, exactly would depend on the options of where, who, how much the pay is. So that's definitely a factor. If there's no interesting shows or fights, then I'm not just going to go just fight randomly. But if something interesting pops up, it makes me a lot more likely to want to do it. After a few months of not really doing anything, I'm probably going to stick to just jiu-jitsu training for a few months and stay with MMA and, and see how I feel. Am I like, oh yeah, I'm really enjoying this jiu-jitsu, and MMA doesn't sound that fun, or if I'm like, oh man, I really miss MMA, I want to do one more shot. That'll kind of give it one more last try. That kind of makes the decision right there.
What was your experience like with PFL? I mean, you fought with World Series of Fighting. This is the rebranded version. I've talked to a lot of other PFL fighters. They've been very complimentary. Also talking about how it just feels like a completely different company. Like, how have you enjoyed PFL compared to your time with the World Series of Fighting?
Yeah, I've actually really liked them. They treat me good. They run more professionally. It's been smooth running. Can't complain with the pay. My individual contract was good before the final rounds and stuff too. It means the pay is great for like up and comers when you're looking at that $1 million chance. So it's great for another show that's running like that. I really hope they do well and stick around. The more shows doing better, the better for the fighters.
Now, you say they treat you good, and I've heard that constantly. Like, what? Because you fought at the highest level. You fought at Strikeforce. You fought in UFC. You fought at the biggest companies. What is it? What is it treating you good? Like, what is being treated good as a fighter compared to not being treated good, especially for someone that's been in all the top promotions?
I just think the UFC, they kind of they just kind of like kind of boss you around, and just expect you to do things, and basically what they tell you goes. And I don't know, it's just kind of the attitude they have at the UFC. Kind of like you're lucky to be fighting with them, and PFL doesn't really treat you like that. They just treat you, with respect. I mean, I got treated great in Strikeforce and stuff as well, and some of the other shows. And not that I have bad blood towards UFC. They weren't terrible, but I just think, I'm sure you've heard a lot of times before that UFC is not exactly known for treating their fighters that great. So they treat people like trash. And they're definitely the name of the sport, but all these other shows popping up paying, it's going to be I'm sure it'll start hurting them at some point. I still think they'll be the number one player, but it's definitely they might start losing more and more people.
I mean, so on the flip, we talked about what you can do next as a fighter. If you do decide to retire, how would you like fans to remember you? Is leaving that imprint of American Jiu-Jitsu on the sport one example of a key legacy thing you want to leave? Because many fighters today totally use that kind of style of fighting, and I think it's a unappreciated factor of the sport that you brought to it.
Yeah, definitely. Just the takedown, the pressure passing, the ground and pound, the hunting for submissions, and it's something. And I still love the sport, so I'd love to help train some other fighters and stay involved in the sport that way.
I mean, yeah, that was another question I had. Is that, I mean, I've seen you in the corner for teammates and stuff like that. Is that maybe an option to keep you close to the sport? Is full-time coaching something you see in your future?
Yeah, I'm not necessarily trying to coach full time, but I would, especially if they build the right team or find the right team to work with. Like I've worked with like Gil Melendez's guys a lot. Wayne Gil Melendez, I was his first coach, brought him into the sport, and helped his team a lot. And it's definitely definitely would like to work with some more fighters. It's just a matter of finding guys that take it serious, because I don't want to waste my time on. Sometimes you get these guys saying they want to be fighters, but they're not really training that hard. So I don't have a lot of patience for that. I'm not going to waste my time unless guys are putting in hard work and taking it serious.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you had so many big, accolades and achievements in your career. If you could narrow it down to three that always was like your biggest, the most important moments in your career. I mean, I know there's Rumble on the Rock, the Strikeforce Championships, there's this main eventing in a massive arena against GSP. What are the three that really stand out for you that matter the most during such a great career?
Yeah, I mean, that's hard because, like you said, there is a lot of big moments. But I would say, yeah, probably the GSP fight, even though I lost it, just because I think it was around 60,000 people. Just that moment, fighting GSP, the greatest welterweight of all time, to a close fight. That was such a memorable experience. It's hard to beat that. And then, probably the Dan Henderson fight. That was kind of before I came to the UFC. I was on a huge win streak, but I think a lot of people were surprised I won. That kind of put my name out there. Another one way back that to me was a big moment was beating Hayato Sakurai, which I think he was ranked number 2 in the world at the time. Yeah. He's not really that known anymore, but when I beat him, he was a top-ranked fighter, and I was completely unknown. I went over to Japan, when I don't know when that was. I know it was 2003, I would guess. Around then, I was pretty young. Went out there and beat, a huge upset, beat Hayato Sakurai.
I mean, speaking of Japan, I want to bring up Asia because, you're one of the best to do it ever in the 170 division. We have an interesting situation recently with this possible trade going on with One Championship and the UFC. Demetrious Johnson maybe going to One Championship, Ben Askren going to the UFC. What are your thoughts on something like that happening? Because there's a lot of questions about what you guys are supposed to be independent contractors. How can that work? Seems like an odd situation. You mentioned how the fighters UFC treats fighters. Demetrious Johnson seems like a prime example of being treated crappy. Like, what are your thoughts on that whole situation? Also, what are your thoughts on Ben Askren's chances in the UFC? Because honestly, I think he's pretty much new age Jake Shields. I mean, you guys are very similar.
Yeah, no, interesting questions. I think the whole trade, I imagine the fighters, I would think they have to agree to it. So I imagine it's something Demetrious wants to do and Ben wants to do. And it's it's kind of a shame UFC letting Demetrious go, but I guess they just never quite were able to find his audience for him in the U.S. And it might be a good thing. Maybe he'll be able to find a bigger audience in Asia. Hopefully they'll be able to be a superstar over there. Because I mean, he's one of the greatest fighters and barely gets any promo or anything here. And Ben, yeah, I don't know. That's actually a really good question. I'm curious to see how he does. He's a great wrestler, really scrambly. I mean, I'm curious how his hands and jiu-jitsu came along, because he certainly can wrestle with anyone. So I personally, I was excited to go in there and see how he does.
How do you think you would face up against a Ben Askren? I mean, you had to, again, your styles are similar. You're both fantastic at what you do. How do you think something like that would go?
That's actually a fight I'd really like, I think, stylistically, because, certain styles you match up people really well, other people you don't match up well. The worst style matchup for me is someone like Ray Cooper, but I think someone like Ben Askren is a pretty good matchup, because he's a really good wrestler, really funky, scrambly style, but I'm a really funky, scrambly style of jiu-jitsu. So I think it plays into my game pretty good. That's a fight that I would love.